When the invitation arrived in the mail, I already knew I'd be an afterthought. It came in a cream-colored envelope with rose gold lettering. Expensive, tasteful, cold. Just like the relationship I had with my younger sister, Grace. I opened it at the kitchen counter, coffee in one hand, bills in the other. The contrast was almost laughable. Together with their families. It began. That phrase alone made me pause. I scanned through the details, already bracing for the sting. Sure enough, no mention of a bridal party. No call from Grace to ask if I'd stand by her side. No, will you give a toast? Or would you be my maid of honor? I wasn't expecting any of that, but it still landed like a quiet slap. Just a formal invite. Like I was a guest. Like I hadn't grown up in the same house, shared the same room for years, or been the one who covered her rent that one time when her startup failed and mom and dad couldn't help. I took a slow sip of my coffee. Bitter. Fitting. The RSVP card was tucked neatly inside. Kindly respond by. As if any part of this had been kind. I thought back to the planning months ago, when Grace had gushed about the venue. A luxury property my event management firm had deep ties with. She couldn't afford it. None of them could, but I'd offered a massive discount as a professional courtesy. I had vouched for my family. Put my name and credibility on the line. And not a word of thanks since. Still, I checked the RSVP box for will attend, because I told myself I was being the bigger person. The professional one. The unbothered one. I even circled filet mignon because, hell, I deserved something that day. But deep down I already felt it. This wasn't going to be a celebration. It was going to be another reminder. That in my family's eyes I was useful. But never essential. I wish I could say I was surprised by the way things were shaping up. But truth be told, this was just another chapter in a very old story. Growing up, Grace was always the one who sparkled. The one who got the bigger birthday parties, the louder applause at school plays, the unquestioned support when she wanted to find herself and changed her major 3 times. Meanwhile, I was the one with the straight A's and the job by 16. The responsible one. The solid one. The one who didn't need much attention, so they didn't bother giving it. Grace was chaos wrapped in charm. I was structure wrapped in silence. She'd fail upward, and I'd get the family nod for being reliable. But reliability doesn't earn you space in the spotlight. It earns you a folding chair behind the curtain. So when Grace got engaged, I knew what was coming. I get a text message, not a champagne toast. You'll come, right? Not a be in the room with me while I pick my dress. And that's exactly what happened. My parents called it just how Grace is. I called it what it was. Dismissal. And yet I still helped. When she called crying because the venue of her dreams was laughably out of budget, I took a deep breath and offered what no one else could. My firm works with them all the time. I can talk to the director. Maybe, if I pitch it right, they'll do a personal favor. She lit up instantly. Seriously. Rachel, that would save us. And they did. I called in a massive favor. We got them tens of thousands knocked off the bill. I took meetings, smoothed timelines, even emailed the planner for her when she got too overwhelmed. Did she ever say thank you? Not once. But I told myself it was fine. That this was family. That I was just doing the decent thing. What I didn't know then, what I hadn't fully let myself accept, was that Grace didn't see me as her sister. She saw me as a resource. A free upgrade. And as I'd learned the day of the wedding. That's all I ever was. Grace had always been good at getting what she wanted, especially when it wasn't hers to begin with. And this venue was a fantasy. A glass-walled estate perched on a hilltop, with views that spilled over acres of green, a bridal suite the size of an apartment, and a staircase so dramatic it might as well have had its own film score. It was the kind of place that made people say, wow, before they even opened the invitation. She found it on Instagram, of course. Sent me the link with a string of heart emojis. Too bad it's like 4 times our budget, she'd said on the phone. Her voice laced with disappointment but not defeat. I mean, we'd have to win the lottery. Or rob a bank. Then came the pause. You know people there, right? I should have paused too. I should have asked her what exactly she was hoping for. But instead, like I always did, I filled in the gap. Fixed the problem before it even finished forming. I can reach out to the director. If I personally vouch, maybe we can negotiate something. That was the beginning of the favor that would cost me more than I realized. I'd worked for an elite event management firm for the past 9 years. We coordinated celebrity weddings, corporate galas, high-end fundraisers. The venue Grace wanted. We'd used it before, for clients who could afford the 5-figure rental fee without blinking. But Grace wasn't one of those clients. So I went to the director, someone I'd worked with for years, someone who trusted me, and said, "It's my sister. Her budget's tight. But she's getting married, and this place is her dream. Can you help me out?" He agreed. 40% off the entire rental package. It was practically theft. I sent Grace the updated invoice, expecting at least a phone call. Maybe a "you're amazing" or "I can't believe you did this for me." Instead, I got a text. "OMG, they gave us the deal." Dim Ratch. No punctuation. No sincerity. Just emojis and excitement like she'd manifested it herself. Still, I swallowed the irritation. Because that's what I always did. I helped her with vendor timelines, proofread the event schedule, and even offered advice on floral layouts. She ignored most of it, of course, and forwarded half the emails to our mother like she had pulled the strings. But I kept showing up. Because I thought, deep down, this would be the moment she finally saw me. Not just the older sister with the boring job, but the one holding her wedding together in the background. I figured, okay, maybe I wouldn't be maid of honor. Maybe I wouldn't even get a special mention. But surely I'd have a place at the head table, right? With the people who mattered. I couldn't have been more wrong. What I didn't know, what no one thought to tell me, was that the very favor I gave them would become the reason they thought they didn't owe me anything at all. To them, the discount had already been paid. They got what they wanted. And I was no longer required. The morning of the wedding, I stood in front of my mirror in a soft navy blue dress. Nothing too loud, nothing too simple. The kind of look that said, "I showed up, I put in effort, I belong here." I curled my hair, added a touch of mascara, and took one last look at the envelope. The invitation. The RSVP I had mailed back weeks ago. It felt heavier than it should have. Like a reminder that I was a supporting role in a story I helped finance but was never written into. Still, I arrived early. The venue was breathtaking, just like the photos, except now it felt personal. I had seen it empty before. Now it was alive with florists, waitstaff, photographers, and distant relatives I barely recognized. The sun had started to dip just enough to throw golden light across the gardens, and every corner of the estate looked like a dream. Guests began to arrive in clusters, all dressed to impress. Laughter rang out. Champagne was already flowing. I caught a glimpse of my parents, my mother in a pale pink gown, my father already half glowing with pride. They were beaming, proud of Grace. Course they were. I tried not to take it personally when they barely acknowledged me. I checked in with the event coordinator out of habit, just making sure things were flowing smoothly. She smiled, thanked me, told me everything was right on track. But I wasn't here as a planner. I reminded myself of that. I was family, a guest, nothing more. The ceremony was beautiful. Grace looked stunning. The vows were a little too long but sweet. Everyone clapped at all the right moments. I clapped too, even when a pit sat heavy in my stomach. Then came the reception. As guests began moving toward the banquet hall, I walked up to the check-in table to find my place card. They were arranged in alphabetical order, each with a tiny floral wax seal. Searched, then searched again. Finally I found it. Rachel Simmons. Table kitchen. Blinked. Kitchen. I stood there still, confused. Surely this was a typo. Mix-up. Maybe kitchen was some cutesy name they gave one of the smaller rooms? I followed the server who was directing people inside, holding my card like a question mark. She led me past the sparkling reception hall, through a side corridor, then pointed to a side door near the back, behind the staff entrance. "Right through there," she said cheerfully. I pushed the door open. And there it was. A round table shoved into a corner. Fluorescent lighting. Slow humming fridge. A stack of folded linens nearby. I was seated with two photographers, the florist's assistant, and someone's plus one who didn't speak English. I stood there frozen. Not at table 14. Not near the bar. Not even in the same room as the rest of the guests. The kitchen. Name. Purpose. And just like that, all the years of swallowing disrespect, all the buried resentment, all the work I had done to keep this wedding together, crashed down in a single searing moment. They hadn't just forgotten me. They had erased me. I sat down slowly, like someone walking into the wrong room at a party and realizing it too late. The chair wobbled. The tablecloth didn't match the ones in the main hall. I could hear muffled laughter from the actual reception room, the clinking of glasses, the start of someone's speech echoing through the wall like it belonged to another life. The florist's assistant gave me a sympathetic smile but didn't say much. The two photographers were flipping through photos on a camera screen, trying to stay professional. And me. I just sat there, staring at the cutlery in front of me like it might explain something. I kept waiting for someone to come in and say, "Oh God, this is a mistake. Rachel, come with me, you're not supposed to be here." But no one came. Because this wasn't a mistake. My name card had been printed and placed. My seat assigned. In the kitchen. At one point, a waiter walked by and did a double take. "You're Grace's sister, right?" he asked. I nodded, trying to keep my voice from cracking. "Yeah." He winced. Actually winced. "Oh. I thought family was seated up front. Weird." And then he disappeared, like he'd just stepped into a room full of secrets he didn't want to be part of. That's when the heat rose up in my chest. That slow, acidic sting of embarrassment that becomes rage when you finally realize it's not just a mistake. It's a message. I thought about everything I had done for this wedding. The emails. The meetings. The strings I had pulled. The credibility I had loaned out for free. And this was how they thanked me. They didn't just forget me. They made space for me where I couldn't be seen. I pushed the chair back, stood up, and left the room. I didn't say goodbye. I didn't look back. I walked past waitstaff, past the bathrooms, past the gilded main hall where Grace was giving a toast to everyone who made this day possible. Everyone except me. When I got outside, I pulled off my heels and stood barefoot on the stone steps, the night air cold against my skin. My hands were shaking, not from sadness but from something deeper, something clearer. They had made their choice. Now I would make mine. And this time it wouldn't be quiet. This time they would feel it. I sat in my car, hands resting on the steering wheel, engine off. The moonlight spilled across the dashboard, and for a while I just stared at my reflection in the rearview mirror. I looked beautiful, elegant, put together, and absolutely invisible. That's what stung the most. Not just the humiliation of being shoved in the back with the vendors, but how expected it felt. Like a final confirmation of every small slight, every exclusion, every time I'd shown up for Grace and gotten nothing in return. But this was deliberate. The favor I pulled. The discount I secured from my own firm. That was real. That had value. It was something no one else in the family could have done. And I handed it over without blinking, because I thought that, for once, maybe I'd be treated like I mattered. But they didn't just ignore me. They used me. And then buried me in the kitchen like I was a footnote in their fairy tale. I pulled out my phone and opened my email. My hands didn't shake. My breath didn't stutter. The decision came down on me like glass breaking, sharp, clear, irreversible. I typed a message to my firm's director of client relations. Subject: Venue discount revocation. Hey Thomas. I'm writing to formally request the withdrawal of the Simmons Garcia wedding discount. Effective immediately. I personally vouched for this client under the impression of professional integrity and good faith. Recent events at the event, however, have crossed a personal boundary that I can no longer overlook. I accept any responsibility for my recommendation and am prepared to provide a full report. Rachel Simmons. I hit send. Just like that. And the weight I'd been carrying for years trying to be the good daughter, the helpful sister, the fixer, slipped off my shoulders like it never belonged there to begin with. Let them panic when the revised invoice comes. Let Grace realize that Instagram Dream Venue now comes with a full price tag. Let my parents finally understand that being reliable doesn't mean being disposable. I sat back in my seat and closed my eyes. For the first time that night, felt seen. Not by them, by me. By the time I woke up the next morning, the reply was already in my inbox. Subject: Re-venue discount revocation. Rachel, we're sorry to hear about what happened. Given your record and the nature of the favor, we'll support your decision fully. I've already contacted the venue. The full invoice will be resent to the client by end of day. We trust your judgment. Let us know if you need anything else. Miss. I sat with that for a minute. That quiet, calm affirmation. No guilt. No drama. No gaslighting. Just support. It was almost surreal. I had spent so much of my life adjusting myself to avoid upsetting people, especially my family, that getting a professional response with zero manipulation felt revolutionary. Few hours later it began. First a call from Grace. I didn't answer. Then one from my mom. Then my dad. Then Grace again. Then a text. Rachel, what is going on with the venue? They're saying the discount is revoked. We already paid deposits. Please call me. I didn't. I went for a walk instead. Bought myself a good coffee. Wandered around the city like someone who finally realized she had nothing left to lose, and a whole new life to build. By the time I got back, my voicemail was full. My mother's voice was brittle. Rachel, this isn't the time to be petty. You could have at least told us before you did something so drastic. My father's tone was sharper. Whatever your issue is, this isn't how grown adults handle things. You made a commitment, and now you're dragging your company into personal drama. And Grace, she didn't even try to hide the entitlement. You've seriously cost us over 20 grand. You're ruining my honeymoon with this. Why would you do this to me? That was it. The line in the sand. Not one of them asked what happened. Not one of them apologized. Not one of them said, "We're sorry you were seated in the kitchen." All they cared about was the bill. Because to them I wasn't family. I was a transaction. Well, they'd made the deal. Now they could pay for it. By Monday morning the storm was in full swing. Grace sent a long multi-paragraph text filled with emotional landmines. She toggled between guilt-tripping me, blaming me, and pretending to be confused. Lines like, "I don't understand how you could do something so extreme without talking to me first. You could have just told me you were upset instead of sabotaging the biggest day of my life." But it was the last part that really caught me. "You're seriously making this about a seating chart." That told me everything I needed to know. To her it was just a seating chart. Just a minor oversight. Just another moment where I was supposed to swallow my pride and stay in my place. But this wasn't about where I sat. This was about years of sitting quietly. And now, for the first time, I had refused. Later that afternoon, I got an email from the venue coordinator, someone I had worked with on high-end events for years. She wrote, "Hi Rachel, I just wanted you to know we've processed the revised invoice. There was some pushback, but we reminded the client that the original discount was granted solely based on your referral. Once that changed, so did the terms. No further issues on our end. Professional, clean, irrefutable. And as for my family, they panicked." Mom tried calling again. Her message was classic emotional manipulation. "Honey, this whole thing is spiraling. You're punishing your sister for something she didn't mean to do. Can't we just sit down and talk this out?" And my dad's tone shifted from stern to pleading. "Rachel, let's not ruin the family over this. Please. Let's find a way to make this right." But they weren't asking how I felt. They weren't offering to make me whole. They were asking me to reset the board, to go back to being silent, supportive, and useful. That version of me was gone. And for the first time, they didn't know how to function without her. They were scrambling, flailing, Because the daughter they'd always depended on to take the high road had finally taken the exit. Let them figure it out. Let them pay the full bill. Let them sit with the cost of treating me like an afterthought. Because this time the favor came with a price. And I wasn't the one paying it. It was a Wednesday evening when the knock came. I wasn't expecting anyone, but the rhythmic urgency on the door told me exactly who it was. I opened it slowly, and there they stood. My parents. Both in coats, both holding that particular brand of forced calm that only shows up right before a family ambush. "Rachel," my mother began, stepping forward without waiting for an invitation. "We need to talk." I said nothing. I just stepped aside and let them in. Not because I wanted to hear them out, because I wanted them to hear me. They walked in like they owned the place, like this was a friendly visit, like the last few days hadn't detonated everything we'd ever called family. My dad sat. My mom hovered. "You blindsided us," he said after a long pause. I tilted my head. "I think you mean you embarrassed us. But okay. Continue." "That discount was already agreed upon. Your firm made a commitment," he snapped. And blinked. "My firm honored a courtesy based on my personal recommendation. That's not a contract. That's trust. And you broke it the moment you treated me like background noise at your other daughter's wedding." Mom put a hand over her mouth. "Rachel, don't be dramatic. The table thing. Grace didn't handle it well. We get that. But to retaliate like this." I turned to her, my voice low and cold. "You think this was retaliation?" "Well, this was clarity." For once, I stopped pretending that being disrespected by my own family was normal. They both stared at me. Neither spoke. So I kept going. "I gave your daughter access to a venue she never could have afforded. I vouched for her, for you, and what did I get? A seat next to the walk-in freezer, with the vendors and the plus ones. Not even a text before. Not an apology after. You don't treat someone like that by accident. You treat them like that when you don't think they matter." Mom finally sat down. Her voice wavered. "We just assumed you'd understand." There it was. The fatal assumption. That because I had always been the one who didn't make a fuss, I'd let this slide too. That I'd eat the disrespect and smile through the reception like I always did. Not this time. "No," I said firmly. "What you assumed was that I would always play the role you wrote for me. Silent, supportive, out of sight. And I'm done doing that." There was nothing left to say. They left not long after. Quiet, shaken, unsure of the daughter who no longer bent for their comfort. And me. I stood in the doorway, watching them go, feeling something I hadn't felt in years. Power. Not loud. Not vengeful. Just mine. The next morning I woke up lighter. Not because anything had been resolved, because I had stopped waiting for it to be. I didn't need a dramatic family blow-up, or a crying phone call from Grace, or some teary confession where they realized how deeply they'd failed me. I wasn't hoping for a fairy tale ending anymore. I had already rewritten the ending myself. For the first time I didn't check my phone first thing. Didn't brace for another passive-aggressive message. Didn't rehearse the next polite, dismissive response in my head. Just breathed. Free of the script I'd been performing for decades. By noon, I was sitting in the corner coffee shop with my laptop open, staring at an email draft I had put off for years. An internal transfer request within my firm. I had been managing events in the same region for too long, always keeping close to home, close to family, close to the invisible leash they had on me. But now I wanted distance. Not to run away but to expand. A new city. A new title. A fresh chapter that didn't have them written in every margin. I hit send. And just like that, I wasn't someone's background support anymore. I was someone making moves for myself. That evening I got one last message from Grace. "You made your point. Congrats. But you've seriously hurt everyone over something that could have been solved with a conversation. No apology. No understanding. Just the same old tone, like I'd set fire to the house because they forgot my birthday." I didn't reply. Because silence is not weakness. Silence is sometimes the only answer. And in this case, silence was the sound of me stepping fully into my own life, without their baggage trailing behind me. For once, the spotlight wasn't something I was begging for. I had claimed it, and I wasn't giving it back. Weeks passed, then a month. No follow-ups, no surprise visits. Just a stillness I hadn't known I needed. And in that silence, something began to bloom. My transfer was approved. I was set to move in 6 weeks. New city, new office, new opportunities. People congratulated me at work, impressed by the career leap. No one knew that behind the scenes, it wasn't just a job I was changing. It was everything. I boxed up my apartment slowly, methodically. Tossed out old photos I no longer needed to keep. Cards that never said what I needed them to say. Gifts that came with strings disguised as ribbons. I stopped waiting for grace to make it right. Stopped waiting for my parents to suddenly see me. Because that was the final truth. I never needed their validation. I needed my own permission to stop shrinking. One day, while packing books, I found a journal from my college days. Half the pages were blank. I used to scribble event layouts and color palettes in the margins, always planning for others, never dreaming for myself. I opened to a clean page and wrote slowly, without hesitation. You are not selfish for choosing yourself. You are not cruel for walking away. You are not broken for wanting more. You are finally free. I ripped the page out and pinned it to my fridge. The day I left for the new city, I stood in the middle of my empty apartment one last time. No grand send-off. No goodbye hugs from family. Just me. And that was enough. As I locked the door and turned the key, I smiled. Not because I was escaping, but because I was finally, unapologetically arriving. 6 months later, Grace's wedding photos made their rounds online. Lavish, curated, dripping in filter-heavy perfection. Hashtag after hashtag about love, family, and fairy tales. Everyone smiling. Everyone glowing. Everyone pretending. I saw one photo where I should have been. In the front row, seated beside my parents. But they'd filled the space with someone else. Cousin maybe. Or a friend of the groom. Someone who didn't fight for a seat because she was handed one without asking. A stranger in the seat meant for a sister. And yet, I didn't feel bitter. I didn't feel sad. I just felt done. I didn't need to comment, didn't need to insert myself. I had already said everything I needed to the only people who ever truly needed to hear it, myself. Back in my new city, life was alive. I hosted events that made headlines. I led a team that respected me. I walked into rooms where people actually listened when I spoke. And when I came home, it was to an apartment filled with books, fresh flowers, and peace. Not silence. There's a difference. Some nights people would ask me about my family. Are you close with them? They'd say, sipping wine at post-event mixers. I'd smile softly and say, we used to be. Then I remembered I have value. And that was always enough. Because in a world where I had once been seated in the kitchen of my own sister's celebration, I had learned to build my own table, and only invite those who saw me, fully, proudly, unforgettably.